guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank everybody for coming to the planning board meeting. I'd like to open this meeting at 6:05. Would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, at this time, I would like to reorganize the board, the planning board. I will step down and declare all planning board seats vacant. At this time, I would like to nominate Jeff Cavallo as chairman of the planning board.
I second it.
Are there any other nominations for planning
I
board
accept.
chairman? Are there any more nominations for planning board chairman? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I guess I accept the nomination. I'd like to make a motion to nominate Robert Woods as vice chairman.
And I will second that.
Any discussion, any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Accept. I'd like to make a motion to nominate Joseph Figueredo as the clerk of the planning board.
I second that.
Second.
Any other nominations? Let's put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Jeff, you are now the chairman of the planning board.
Boom.
Switch.
Wait a minute.
That was easy.
I thought they were gonna create the dance on the chairs, but I
It's kind of dangerous up here.
oh, okay.
You don't know what's gonna happen with these chairs. It's gonna roll over.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right, ready? Thank you, everybody. Keep that gavel far away, please. All right, so I guess I need to read the notice of vacancy to fill.
Yes.
All right, so I'll go ahead and read that. Hear me okay? Town of Dayton, Board of Selectmen, 979 Somerset Avenue, Dayton, Mass. 02715. I don't know if I need to read the thing, and it doesn't matter. Okay.
Just the notice of vacancy.
Notice of vacancy to fill. Town of Dayton Planning Board member. The Board of Selectmen, together with the members of the Town of Dayton Planning Board, announce a vacancy within the Planning Board. The Board of Selectmen and the remaining members of the Planning Board shall, within 30 days, appoint a member to serve until the next annual election, at which time a successor will be elected to serve for the balance of the unexpired term, if any. Candidate must be a resident of Dayton. Interested parties should submit a letter of interest and a resume either in person or to the Board of Selectmen's office, 979 Somerset Avenue, Dayton, Mass., or by email, lkerwin, that's LKERWIN, at dayton-mass.gov by 4:30 p.m. on Friday, May 13th, 2022. So by Friday the 13th, what can go wrong? Interviews and selection of a candidate. So question there. That's, town hall's not open on Friday.
No, but they can email.
You can email
But
it.
they
Okay.
can-
All right, thank you. Interviews and selection of a candidate will be conducted at a joint meeting of the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen scheduled for May 18th, 2022 at the Dayton Middle School, where the remaining Planning Board members as well as the Board of Selectmen members will participate in the interviews and the selection of a candidate. Board of Selectmen, Town of Dayton. All right, that is done. All right, so next on the agenda is to confirm the next meeting as May 18th, 2022, and that will be at the Dayton Middle School, 1250R Somerset Avenue, Dayton. Going right down, we are ready for the first public hearing. Agenda item 5A, public hearing for Pure Oasis Grow LLC, 620 Spring Street and 0 Summer Street, map 4, lot 140, 170 rather, and 405, special permit site planning review. it's a continuation. Do we need to vote to continue, or is it just a continuation?
You make a motion to reopen.
Okay, all right. To entertain a motion to reopen the public hearing for the Pure Oasis Grow permitting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? And motion carries. Sir?
I would like to state for the record that I was absent on April the 6th in accordance to the Mullins certification that I will be signing. That I did watch that meeting. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Floor is yours. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. Is this on?
Is this microphone on? It is. They can hear you back
super.
here.
All right. Good evening. For the record, my name is Mark Bornstein. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Bowditch and Dewey in Worcester. Our firm represents Pure Oasis Grow LLC. This evening, I'm joined by Mr. Kevin Hart and Mr. Kobe Evans, who are right here in the front. It's my understanding, and for the record, I'm filling in for my colleague Brian Grossman, who's appeared before this board before. It's my understanding that Pure Oasis Grow LLC has hosted a site visit at the property. We've submitted materials. Additional supplemental materials have been submitted to the board and the peer review. It's my understanding through my colleague that the peer review has not provided any additional comments. So this evening we're here just if there's any follow-up questions or any additional information that's needed. The representatives of Pure Oasis Grow LLC are here and myself. I've reviewed the material, so I'm happy to discuss any of the particular, if the board has any particular questions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there was a site visit. Mr. Woods was present. Anybody on the board have any concerns you want to bring up at this point with the package in front of us here? Are we trying to vote on this tonight?
I believe you were.
Okay, all right.
That's the will of the board.
Okay, got it. All right, so take a minute, look through your package here.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, just regarding the 1,000-foot buffer to any RMD or marijuana establishment. I think we spoke last time about potentially leasing space within your own building to another marijuana establishment. So, I think that's where we said we'd probably do a minor modification or something to that effect,
Yeah,
because,
I think we talked about having, what we originally was looking for was a blanket waiver, if you will, relief for the whole building.
for the envelope of the building?
Correct. And
Okay.
then there would be an administrative process so that if we had a tenant that was a cannabis establishment that wanted to do business, then they would come back before the board for the administrative hearing before they move forward with the process.
Okay.
If I may, just to kind of add on to that, it's my understanding that even if this waiver were to be granted, the town would still have to grant a host community agreement. They would still be subject to the administrative process.
And a special permit.
Well, in terms of the special permit, whether it be this particular special permit, because we're seeking relief for both spaces in this particular instance. So there might be, if there needs to be modifications of special permit that are specific to that additional use, that would be, perhaps an amendment would be needed, or it would be through the site plan approval process, because obviously parking would have to be determined as well.
I would like to see a special permit for any other business going in there, regardless.
That's acceptable as well.
Right.
So in this instance, the special permit that we're seeking then would be specific to their particular use.
Right.
But the waivers are very helpful for purposes of marketing the property, right? So in order for a new applicant to come into the town, it's helpful for them to know that they're not gonna have to seek that waiver, if you will. They know that the town is aware of the potential new cultivation facility, and they would have to go through those processes. So it's more about laying the foundation for a future user.
Right, but they would have to apply for a special permit.
That we will, yeah, that is acceptable to the applicant.
Yeah.
That was all I had on that.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
The other one I have too is annual reporting. You're looking for a waiver on that?
Yeah, so it's my understanding that the HCA has a different time period in terms of annual reporting than what's listed in the bylaw. So in essence, Pure Oasis would like to have the reporting timeframes be the same as the host community agreement. So that way there isn't a difference in terms of when the reporting is due.
As long as we get a report
Oh,
annually,
absolutely.
every year.
There-
You know, just to make sure everybody's license is up to.
Certainly, yeah. No, and in full transparency, there's a lot of reporting that's required for these establishments, as you know, from the state level.
Right.
And in terms of the local level, the thought process was, I believe the bylaw provides that it has to be provided by January 31st, and I think and the host community agreement says 3 months after. So the thought process was we should just have those time periods be the same. So whichever is later, either the bylaw or the host community agreement, that's what was requested.
Okay.
I guess that's the only thing I'm confused about as well, because on this, on these notes that came back, section 2939 says applicant has requested a waiver to comply with HCA entered into the
Yep.
town of Dayton. So it's a waiver from 2939 to fall in with the HCA. That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
if you
that
look in your
language means. Okay.
Yes, sir. So if you look at your materials, I believe it's the section, 2939 annual reporting. So the HCA provides for 90 days after the close of the calendar year, while the bylaw says January 31st.
Got it, okay, gives you more flexibility. Okay. All right, I didn't have any other concerns. Did anybody else on the board have any other concerns to bring up at this time?
None here.
Do we normally open it up to the public now? Any concerns from the public? Anybody here present that wishes to address this or have any questions or needs of clarification? Okay.
I'm sorry, I do have one question.
ma'am.
So are we looking to have your annual reporting, is that gonna be at the same time as the host community agreement? And then, what's the date on that?
So the host community agreement provides that a report is due within 90 days from the close of each calendar year.
Okay,
So, and I believe the bylaw provides that an annual report will be delivered to the special permit granting authority and the town clerk no later than January 31st. So there's some
Okay.
inconsistency as to what's listed in the HCA versus the bylaw. So in order to make sure that all the information that's being submitted to the town is as accurate as possible, it's helpful to have that 2 extra months.
okay.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have anything further here. So do we close the public hearing or do we vote on this first?
You wanna vote on this first?
Okay, all right.
Okay, before we vote, Jeff, if you don't mind, please.
Oh, please.
I would like to say that I did a site visit with Colby and Mr. Rhines. And we went up to the facility in Brockton, and I just want to say this for the residents that are concerned about the odor. And it clearly states in all this paperwork that will be odor-free. But the facility that we did visit was a great facility. It was spotless. There was no odor whatsoever outside. I went completely around the building, 360. Inside the building itself, everything was contained to each room. Everything was clean. All the employees seemed like, they were very professional. Nice, quiet operation. And I just want the residents of the town to know that we did do our homework. There should not be any odor. It clearly says in this document that there will be no odor, and, that was a big concern for some of the neighbors, even though they didn't show up and, say anything during the public input period, but I want everyone to rest assured that we did do our homework, and I was very impressed.
Yep. Thank you, sir. And just to add to that point, as I said before, and as the board is well aware, these facilities are highly regulated by the Cannabis Control Commission. So in addition to the representations that are being made in this document, which Pure Oasis will be held to personally, there's additional oversight aside from just the town of the state. They're going to be inspecting the facility before it becomes operational. So all the measures will have to be in place, otherwise they won't be able to open. But that obligation still remains ongoing to the town as well.
Right.
Okay. All right, so, hearing, no other comments from the public or the board, I'll entertain a motion to, approve this special permit site plan review, for Pure Oasis Grow LLC, 620 Spring Street and 0 Summer Street.
Should we vote on each waiver separately?
Yeah, so I think it might be easier
Okay.
if we go through the waivers, and then state the waivers and make sure that the applicant is aware, and also the conditions, and then everyone's on the same page, and then make the motion to approve.
Got it.
Okay,
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion for a waiver for section 2924, 100-foot buffer to a residential zoning district.
So moved.
All in favor?
He made the motion, yep. Got a second.
I'm sorry, Robert Woods motioned, you second?
Yes.
No,
He's, Joe seconded, yeah.
Yeah, I said so moved.
Oh, so, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
okay, thank you.
Motion was already made, though, by Woods.
Want to make another? Ready?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, I'll make another motion for a waiver for section 2925, 1,000-foot buffer to any other RMD or marijuana establishment. Joe seconded it.
And do we want to add
Are we
that?
voting on them individually, or are you gonna make 4 motions and then we vote on board? We didn't vote on the first one.
You want to add the
make the motions
additional
and then
special
vote at the
permit?
end.
I'm sorry.
I thought you said vote on them individually.
Yeah, individually. So we already voted on the first one.
No, we made a motion and we seconded, but we didn't vote.
Well, let's vote.
Very good. I swear we've done this before.
Well, the waivers are a unique animal. I totally
I know,
understand.
I
yeah.
know.
And so, I mean, however the board wants
Okay,
to
we had a
handle it.
motion and we had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse
The
me, for
motion
just
carries.
1 second, we want to make sure that, because of the discussion about the, any new leases that come in, the requirement that that the will of the board for the special permits that they need to come in for, the administrative process, I should say. You want to make sure you have that defined
That's in addition to?
on that.
If I may, we could
Yeah.
add that as a condition of approval.
Okay,
So we could
Yeah.
say that, and we can work, we don't have to hash this out right here, but my thought process would be that the special permit granted for this particular facility is specific to Pure Oasis's operations. And then any third parties, I think it would be helpful to the extent.
Third parties,
Yeah,
yes.
if to the extent that there's any slight modifications to their layout, if they bump out a wall 6 feet, as long as it's, within their operations, if that's acceptable to the board, I think that would be most helpful. But any third party that's operating a separate facility, that kind of larger space that's shown on the plans, I think that would obviously be subject to a separate special permit.
right.
Is that acceptable
And I
to the
think
board?
that might be easier if we just put that down as a condition, so we don't have to make it part of the motion. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, that'll be a condition in the special permit, but not
Part of the motion.
part of the motion. Got it. Okay, so we had a motion, a second, and a vote on waiver from section 2924. We all voted aye, so we're good on that one.
so so 2924 has been voted?
100-foot
Okay.
buffer to residential zoning district.
Okay.
All right, what do you want the next one now?
2925. We have a motion by Mr. Woods.
Yep, and we
Mr.
just,
Figurito has seconded, so now
Okay.
we just need to.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 2925. Next one's 2926.
Okay, I'll make another motion for a waiver for section 2926, 1/4 mile buffer to any playground, public athletic field, or similar public recreational facility.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second, let's take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 4-0. And now we are on the,
Yeah, right?
So yeah, there's only 3 waivers that are being requested. So,
Those conditions
Well,
listed.
you had the annual reporting one. too.
oh, I'm sorry,
Then
yes.
there's one additional one, the 2939. It's on page, last page of the whole thing on the bottom on the table.
You want us to make a motion on that? On the
You're gonna need one.
annual reporting? I'll make a motion to deny the request.
Well, so they're not requesting to not report. They're just requesting to have it coincide with the host community agreement, so that they're reporting, they both have to submit the same report. It was just at different times. They're just asking to do it at the same time.
The later of the two. So instead of January 31st, it would be due March 31st. But if that's problematic for the board, you know.
I'll make a motion that the annual report will be submitted no later than March 31st of each calendar year.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
Abstentions? So motion
So,
carries.
so that's effectively a waiver from 2939 then, based on that motion,
Yes.
effectively. Okay.
Okay, so we got all the waivers, and now we're back to the special permit. So we don't have to vote separately for the condition of approval?
On the
That's included?
conditions.
Okay.
No.
All right, so at this time, going back to the beginning, I will entertain a motion to approve a special permit site plan review for Pure Oasis Grow LLC, 620 Spring Street and 0 Summer Street.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Motion carries. 4-0.
Sorry.
And
Mr. Figueredo, did you make the motion?
I did.
Who seconded?
Chris did.
I didn't hear you. Oh, sorry.
So was that for, sorry, special permit and site plan, or was that just special permit?
That,
Well,
it's for both.
Okay, super.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Oh,
you can't motion.
I can't motion.
You're a chairman.
I'm a
You
chairman.
can't.
I will entertain a motion
I'll
to close the public hearing for Pure Oasis
make
Grow.
that.
Thank
I'll
you.
second that.
Excellent. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll get it.
Opposed? Any opposed? Abstentions? Ayes carry it, 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to go. Whew, we got through 5A.
So we'll work through with the town to come up with the conditions of approval?
Yes.
Is that correct?
So
Okay.
I'll draft that up and then get it ready for council's review. Send a draft to him and you, or Attorney Gross.
Everything should go through Brian Grossman.
Yep, and that'll probably be done by the beginning of next week.
Excellent. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for your
Thank you
patience.
guys. Good to see you again.
Next time, bring sample.
Now.
I work for the federal government. Don't bring samples.
Yeah.
Still,
Under $50 worth.
Oh, really?
he knows the
You only
gifting
get about this
threshold.
much.
All right. Okay, now on to agenda item 5B. It's a public hearing for zoning bylaw amendments. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing for zoning bylaw amendments.
I'll make a motion.
Got a motion? Do we have
I'll
a
second it.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. 4-0. Okay, so before us, we have 4 bylaw amendments. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I need you to read the public notice into record.
Thank you very much. And is that in our packet?
Yes, it is. It should be right on top, right after your first one, the zoning bylaw amendment, section 5094 retreat lots. Right after that first.
Oh, it is. Okay. Right after that first one, there's a notice.
Yep.
I have, right after the zoning, I have the solar electric generating facility.
Looks like this.
I'll read it. In accordance with the provisions of Chapter 40A,
I don't have that.
Section 5, Mass General Law, the Dayton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, May 4th, 2022, at 6 p.m. at Old Town Hall, 1111 Somerset Avenue, Dayton, Mass., and review and receive public comments concerning the proposed amendments to the Dayton zoning bylaws adopted June 7th, 2021. The proposed amendments are identified below in terms of subject matter. The item designations given have been assigned to the planning board for identification purposes only. Article numbers will be subsequently be established by the selectmen for the warrant.
That's the whole letter. Okay.
Oh, you want me to keep going?
Yeah, you have to read the whole thing.
Okay, item 1, retreat lots, zoning bylaw. To see if the town will vote to delete in its entirety section 5094, requirements, subsection B, and replace with a new subsection 5094, requirements, section B, or take any action thereon. Item 2, ground-mounted solar prophylactic installations zoning bylaw. Motion to see if the town will vote to delete in its entire section 4600, ground-mounted solar, I don't know what that word is, photovoltaic installations,
Photovoltaic.
and replaced with a new section 4600, solar electric generating facilities, and to see if the town will vote to amend zoning bylaws by modifying and adding the terms and definitions in proper alphabetical order to section 6, definitions, to take any action thereon. Item 3, flood hazard overlay district zoning bylaw, to see if the town will vote to delete in its entirety section 4200, flood hazard overlay district, and replace with a new section 4200, flood plan overlay district, and to see if the town will vote to amend zoning bylaws by modifying and adding the terms and definitions in proper alphabetical order to section 6, definitions, and to take actions thereon. Item 4, kennel residential zoning bylaw, to see if the town will vote to amend section 6, definitions, by deleting the existing kennel residential definition in its entirety, and replacing it with a new definition, kennel residential, or take any action thereon. A copy of the complete proposed text is available at http://www.dayton-mass.gov, government/planning, board/appendix PhD, or at the office of town clerk or the planning board at 979 Somerset Avenue, Dayton, Massachusetts, during regular business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard should appear at this time and place designated for the public hearing. Dayton Planning Board.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so, how do we want to do these, one at a time, or? So first one is section 5094, retreat lots. Do we want to read the text from the retreat lots? How's this work?
So the first, you can just make a notation of 5094, section B.
And we can just read off,
New text
read
that's
off the
going
new
in
text.
the explanation.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and just read from that, section 5094, requirements, and subparagraph B. New text will say as follows, said lot shall have a minimum street frontage of 40 feet, said line to be measured continuously along a single street or along two intersecting streets if their angle of intersection is greater than 120 degrees, and a width of not less than 20 feet at all points. And the history behind this is initially, the word continuously was not present. So this will allow somebody to have frontage for a retreat lot with really any lengths to make up 40 feet, or widths to make up 40 feet. And this is going to limit that to be a continuous 40 feet, as the text shows here, as long as, or an intersection of any two streets, as long as the angle is greater than, or if their angle of intersection is greater than 120 degrees. Sound right?
Yeah, it sounds right.
So, and just to, if you don't mind, if I can just add to that, it,
Please.
basically just takes from the text of our definition of a, within our zoning bylaws of the definition of a lot frontage. So it matches the frontage definition of our zoning bylaws. There seemed to be a discrepancy of what the definition of a frontage was on a retreat lot versus the frontage of a standard lot frontage. So now this just matches it, so that,
That's right. Yeah, before it just said frontage, and it didn't explicitly say continuous.
correct.
But if you went to the definitions, the glossary in the back of the document, frontage was implied to be continuous. So to make it explicit, the word continuous was added here. That's the change.
Correct.
But it's not really a change. Clarification.
Clarified.
Yes, yes. Okay.
So we make a motion to,
Well, if you have any questions or concerns from the board, we can speak, and then we can open it up to the public, right? If there's any public input for this particular change.
I don't have anything.
Anything,
Nothing?
Mr. Woods?
None here.
Yes. All right, so at this time, we can open it up to the public, if anybody has any questions or concerns. Yes, please.
Tom Byers, Miller's Lane, Dayton.
Could you come up to the podium, sir?
Betcha. I read that earlier today. Now, does that mean the 40 feet has to be continuous across? Or can you have 20 feet here broken up and then 20 feet?
No, it never meant breaking it up in pieces. This is.
I didn't think so. The way I read that was it would be 40 feet continuous, correct?
40 feet continuous, yeah.
It's been approached, we've been approached by that was.
Yeah, because I believe that's happened, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the purpose of
Yeah.
this.
And so if
Okay.
you look at the definition of frontage,
Clarify.
I mean, if you look at the definition of frontage in the document, it means continuous. It says it in the back of the document, but it wasn't explicit in this paragraph. This is just pulling that definition
Right,
forward.
that's how I looked at it too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Nancy Goulat, 631 Great Terrace, North Dayton. Would you read this part about 120 degrees? I didn't understand what that means. It sounds like the frontage might go around a corner if there's a street.
Two streets
Intersecting
or
streets.
along two intersecting streets if their angle of intersection is greater than 120 degrees.
Okay, my only question is, that's what I thought it meant.
Yeah.
Street, should it be accepted street or road? We have streets on maps called paper streets. So all I'm saying is, should there be a further clarification that it should be, well, an accepted street, or if you've got an entrance into a private development, it's a street, but if it's not an accepted street in the town, that's the only thing I'm questioning. I'm not questioning the addition you've made to clarify about 40 feet. But just that corner thing makes me wonder if that street, if it should say town-accepted road or town-accepted street.
Is frontage if it's not an accepted road? I don't think it is. You can't have frontage on a paper street.
Yeah,
All right, so strike paper. How about if it abuts the road that goes into a private development? That's why I'm saying, should it say accepted street?
It's not a public road, so therefore can't get frontage onto that.
Yeah, by the definition of frontage, you have none.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for clarification,
Oh,
because
it's a really good question, yeah.
we have, because of that 120, I thought, does that mean they're gonna go into another property if it's at that degree? And that's all I'm saying. That's why I'm wondering if it should be an accepted road, because if somebody had frontage on a town road, but it wasn't enough, but they could do that part, the 120, and that was a road, although it was not a town-maintained road, because it was the main road into a private development, that's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a very good question. I mean, should we add that? I mean, it's another point of clarity.
It
Along a
is,
single accepted
I think
street,
it's always good to be
explicit.
much more as explicit as we can be, but at the same time, you cannot get frontage onto anything other than a town accepted road. So,
my point, that doesn't say
Right.
that.
It doesn't say that, and we can be right back, we can be right
yeah,
back
no,
here again.
I understand, I understand that.
We can easily be right back here again where we're like, yeah, but that's what we meant, but that's not what it says.
So it's a change.
Yeah,
Can we still make that change?
we can still make changes tonight.
you can,
Yeah.
yes, you can make the changes tonight. The only question I would have is that in our current definition of the lot frontage of, it doesn't make that distinction.
It also doesn't have that 120-degree thing.
It does.
Oh, it does?
That's where it
That's
comes
a direct lift from there.
Yeah. I did a cut and
So
paste.
it's an accepted,
Would it be a good idea just to run that by town council or?
it's May 4th, though.
And do we have time?
It's May
Yeah.
4th, we might not have
We
time.
won't have time. So the lot frontage of definition currently, a lot line coinciding with the sign line of a street which provides both legal rights of a vehicular access and physical vehicular access to the lot. Said line to be measured continuously along a single street or along two intersecting streets if their angle of intersection is greater than 120 degrees. Vehicular access to a building site on the lot shall be exclusively through the frontage of the lot.
I don't see any harm in just adding the word here.
Yeah, I agree.
Put the word in there, Jeff.
Let's put the word in there.
Put-
So, we have to make a motion to modify this, right?
Okay, yep.
All right, so entertain a motion to add the word accepted in front, in between the words single street, and in between the words, in between the words in between the words intersecting in streets. So it will read, along a single accepted street or along two intersecting accepted streets if their angle of intersection is greater than 120 degrees.
Intersecting,
You want a motion?
Accepted.
You can,
Motion on that.
I'll make a motion to accept that.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussions on this? Either from the board? Okay. Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. While we're voting. Any discussion from the public before we take that to a vote? All right. Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Ms. Goulart. Okay, so we made a modification. So we have to vote to accept it as amended or accept it as modified, or we move on to the next one?
you just did, right?
We made a motion to modify it.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion to accept it?
Oh, motion to, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so at this point, I want to entertain a motion to approve the bylaw amendment as modified, section 5094 retreat lots.
Joe move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board or from the public before we take it to a vote? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's 4 ayes. Any opposed? Abstentions, and 4-0. That motion carries. So we accepted 5094. Moving on to section 4600, ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations. So, all right. Members of the board, you have this in your package. In addition to what you have in your package, there's also some additional edits in the back there. We can talk about those afterwards. Do you have any questions or concerns as presented in front of you? This is the thing we've been working on for a while. What's that? 46. Let me go back to the top here. 4600. Now, are we reading this into record?
You can do an explanation. I think you will be here for a really long evening.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
Hopefully the public will, the public has read most of it. It's pretty lengthy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let Mr. Chairman
Okay,
explain.
got it. Oh, that's me.
That's you, Jeff.
Yep. Let's see, well, I want to see if these guys are
Oh, okay.
giving them a moment to quietly read if they need to, but, okay, so what we have before us here is section 4600, correction, ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations. And those that have been involved in this from the beginning, you understand where this came from, why this is here. We are trying our best to protect the town of Dayton from overdevelopment, from solar farms within the town of Dayton. And so a number of restrictions were put together to protect the town residents, protect the town municipality, but also being fair to developers who want to come in and, they want to make money. Makes sense, right? So what we've done independently, and Carrie's done a lot of work on this, and a lot of other folks in the town have been involved putting this together, doing research, figuring out what was out there, what was available available from other municipalities throughout the state of Massachusetts. So we gathered a lot of input, made a few modifications ourselves. This document, which is 15 pages, right?
Give or
No,
take, yeah.
Yeah, it goes into minimum lot size requirements based on the size and the kilowatt requirements, lays out fee requirements, not only decommissioning fee requirements, but also something that is a little unique that we picked up from another town here, and I'm not going to find it now that I'm looking for it, Carrie.
Watley.
What's that?
Watley. Town of
Watley was the town of Watley, where they had a specific section here talking about impact of agricultural, environmentally sensitive land. I think that's worthwhile reading, so I'll read that. It's section 4680, where it says, "The facility shall be designed to minimize impacts to agricultural and environmentally sensitive land and to be compatible with continued agricultural use of the land whenever possible. For every acre of land assessed under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 61 or 61A, chapter land in any of the previous 3 years to be occupied by the solar facility, including its plantings and setbacks, the owner or operator shall pay a resource replacement fee to the Town of Dayton Community Preservation Act Open Space Reserve for the preservation of farmland and timberland." That's not to be confused with the decommissioning fee or anything like that. Or decommissioning or abandonment fee, which is something that the town of Dayton or other towns will put in if the company just one day disappears, and we've got to reclaim the land, that's different. That's a different fee. This here is specifically to try to preserve the farmland we have in the town of Dayton from being overdeveloped. Additional things in this bylaw are setbacks and requirements and dimensions and densities for the entire thing here. So, and sound requirements, sound level requirements. So there's quite a bit here. This has been read into record as a standard operating procedure in previous planning board meetings. So we're going to defer from reading the full text tonight.
I think, if I can, Mr.
Please.
Chairman, you might also want to make a note that the other thing that we want to make sure that we make note of is the incorporation of the energy storage systems, which is the new up-and-coming thing, or also known as battery storage units, because they were not in our current bylaw.
Right.
So those need to be incorporated in there so that we can have some guidelines established.
Yeah, there's safety requirements for battery storage units. A lot of lithium-ion battery storage units are being coupled along with these solar farms. Before, it used to be just a solar farm. Now it's a solar farm with a big battery bank. And so what's happening is the solar companies are making a lot of energy during the day, and they're dumping that to the grid. And then the battery banks allow them to store some of that and offload it when there isn't any sun, so they can maintain discharge to the grid. And at the end of the day, it's all about maintaining their income. So that's what they're doing. They're trying to maintain a consistent flow of electricity to the grid. So because they want to do that, we have a lot of safety requirements and reporting requirements and a lot of other restrictions within this bylaw to keep residents safe. I think that covers it, right? That's the big one as well. Okay. At that point, we can open it up to the public if anybody would like to speak on this. Mr. Goulart?
Nancy Goulart, 631 Gray Terrace, North Dayton. I'm also a member of the Board of Assessors and Chairman of the Stormwater Committee. I'm going to ask this as a resident because this has not been discussed at the Board of Assessors or the Stormwater Committee. So, 4680, the impact on agricultural and environmentally sensitive land.
Okay.
So my first question is, do we have a definition of environmentally sensitive land?
Wait, what?
Because on the stormwater or conservation side, I think of wetlands. So not sure, I don't think that's what you're talking about. Or is it?
It is part, yes.
Okay,
it would
but
be.
they don't put solar farms on wetlands.
Not on them, but around them.
Yeah, but that's regulated through Concom. And obviously, if they disturb anything, they have to either replicate it or they don't get permitted, that whole thing. So I'm just talking now about 4680. Is there a definition for environmentally sensitive land? And the reason I ask that is because the very end of this says, the owner or operator shall pay a resource replacement fee to the town of Dayton, CPA, open space reserve, for the preservation of farmland, which I assume you mean agricultural, and timberland. But you don't mention timberland in the beginning. You're talking about environmentally sensitive land. They're different. So you need to take a look at, that needs clarification. If it's also including forest land or timberland, that should be, I think, up in the beginning with what you're listing. I think you need a definition of environmentally sensitive land. And then it says, it goes on further, the first sentence, environmentally sensitive land and to be compatible with continued agricultural use of the land. Well, timberland do you consider that agricultural? Because we look at that as different. And at the end, you're talking about farmland, which I think you mean agricultural, and timberland. So the question is, you're only mentioning continued agricultural use of the land. Okay? So I think that needs clarification. And I think what's important also is the fact that, again, I'm not speaking for the Stormwater Committee or the Board of Assessors, but those are terms that come into our vocabulary, whether we're assessing land on the assessor side or whether we're looking at land from the stormwater side and whatever's on that property. So I think across the board, boards in the town, we should all be talking about the same definition of land or classification. I don't mean classification for zoning, but I mean if it's forest land, it's agricultural, it's timber, but environmentally sensitive doesn't really define. So that's what I'm asking there. The part about continued use agricultural, once the land, the types of land are defined, you may want to add more than continued agricultural use, okay? Then you go on further about second line from the bottom, where it says previous 3 years to be occupied by the solar facility, including its plantings and setbacks, the owner or operator. This needs clarification, again, because of terminology used by assessors in stormwater. Are you talking about the owner of the real estate or the owner of the personal property? We look at the owner as the owner of the real estate upon which the solar farm sits. We look at the operator as the owner of the personal property. So in effect, the way we look at owner, that's the owner of the real estate. The operator is the solar company who owns the personal property and operates the generation of electricity through solar power. So I think that needs to be clarified so that down the road, somebody doesn't say, well, the assessors consider this, and the stormwater thinks it's this, and the planning board thinks it's this. So these are the kind of things that we've run into, especially when we've gotten involved, I have gotten involved with pilot agreements. Okay? So these are very important because in pilot agreements, we have a boilerplate standard, everybody gets the same one, and the applicant just has to fill in the blanks. But again, there should not be confusion about owner of what, okay? And we did go through that with town council and got on the pilot boiler agreement. Again, operator is personal property and owner is the real estate owner, unless it's the same. If the owner of the property is the owner of the personal property, first of all, the real estate is tax exempt under the law, and only the personal would be. But again, that's just an aside. So these are some of the technicalities we've had to deal with, again, doing pilot agreements. So those were some of the questions. Now, as far as the fee itself, my concern is that, and I know you said they weren't connected, but the town has the 4680 that talks about the decommissioning fee. And it clearly states in there to remove the installation and remediate the landscape. So that's the solar operator who has to put up that bond to put that money up is obligated to either remove all the stuff and remediate the land to as near as its original condition as possible. Or if they say, we're not doing it, we've got the money to do it. But then the town is obligated to follow this and get rid of all the equipment and then either seed it if it was farmland or plant trees if it was woodland. So in looking at this proposal for 4680,
4690.
Mine says 4680.
46
Impact of
40
agricultural and environmentally.
Oh, okay, you skipped down to the abandonment and decommissioning, which is 4690. That's what we were just talking about.
Yeah, I got two different sheets here. One is 4680, financial surety for decommissioning installation. That planning board?
Yes, that's the current decommissioning bond.
Okay, so, and I know you said they weren't connected, but I'm pointing out that there is a connection because of the remediation requirement that you already have. Now, as far as the acre of every land to minimize the impact to agricultural and environmentally sensitive land, and to be compatible with continued agricultural use, which I've already mentioned, for every acre of land assessed under provisions of MGL 6161A, or any previous 3 years to be occupied by the facility, including its planting. So the owner shall pay a resource replacement fee to the town of Dayton CPA. Well, isn't the resource replacement fee what's obligated to happen right here?
On the abandonment and decommissioning?
Yeah.
No.
Now, another thing I was told was, this fee is because for the term of the permit for that solar farm, and they seem to be around 20 years. That's at least what pilot agreements are, because after the end of 20 years, they either replace them or get rid of them, my understanding. So, is the fee that's talked about here under 4680, impact of agricultural and environmentally sensitive land, is that because it was either trees or farmland, it came out of 61 or 61A, and you're asking somebody, whether it's the real estate owner or the solar farm operator, to pay a fee to the CPA for what?
For the removal of those other resources from the town of Dayton.
Removal of what resources?
The farmland or timberland resources.
Okay. So I own the land and you're the solar company. First of all, you come to me and say, we would like to lease your property for 20 years to put a solar farm in. And we start talking.
Is this a privately owned solar farm?
Yes.
Then this isn't the same thing, right? This doesn't apply to a privately owned.
All our solar farms are private.
Well, I should say it's not a, continue.
It's not a homeowner.
Not a homeowner, okay.
Oh, and I'm not talking about, no, as the real estate owner, I own a tract of whatever, it's agricultural, I'm not using it. It's
Okay.
Or I got timber, but it's under 61A.
Okay,
So you're the solar company, and you asked me if I'm interested in leasing land to you for, let's say, 20 years, and you're gonna put a solar farm on it, okay? Now, if I say yeah, and we get a ballpark discussion going on what's gonna happen, because I'm gonna say to you, by the way, this is gonna come out of 61A, and you, Mr. Solar Company, are gonna pay the 5 years back taxes, the rollback, all right? That's gonna be part of our understanding, and this lease thing. So we get to the point we're talking. The first thing, once we say that we're interested in pursuing it, the first thing that has to happen is the various town commissions, committees, and ending up with the Board of Selectmen have to take action to take this out of Chapter 61A. If the intent is to stop solar farm development, the immediate way to do it is for the town to buy the land, because they're gonna have an option to buy the land, the acreage you and I are talking about. That if the town exercises its right to buy that, whether it's the Board of Selectmen or the Concom or whoever, that ends it. You and I are not gonna be putting a solar farm on that property.
Right.
However, what has happened is the town has not exercised options, because for various reasons, and so now the town says, all right, we're not gonna exercise the option. You and I can continue with the process. So we go to the various boards and committees in the town, and everybody we have to go through for everything we need, all the permits. Well, as the private landowner, if I'm going to be asked to pay 3 years because that agricultural land or that forest is not going to be available, I believe it infringes on my right as a property owner. That is my property. As long as I comply with all the rules and regs in town, and you and I reach the agreement on a solar farm, I can do that. I'm not taking away anything from anybody. But the other side of that coin is, and in this, what the scenario I'm going to give you now, I say yes, impose it. So let's set aside the private property that I own, okay? Mm-hmm. You're still the solar company, I'm the town of Dayton. You come to me and say, I would like to put a solar installation on property the town owns off of Tremont Street. And the discussions continue. We don't have to deal with 61A. It's town land. It's publicly owned land. As publicly owned land belonging to the town of Dayton, the residents of this town can go on that property. They can hike. They can take pictures of birds. They can sit there and watch birds. They can hunt. They can do whatever. If in fact, and I think it would probably have to go to a town meeting vote, if in fact that approval goes through and you, the solar developer, have permission to put a solar farm on public land, that is the case when the general public is losing something, because for the life of the lease, they can't go on that property. They can't hike or fish or bird watch or whatever else they do up there. I think in that case, the town is right to impose, if you will, some kind of a use fee, because the general public, all of us that are residents, can no longer go on that property for the next 20 years because it is now restricted because it's private once that solar farm goes in there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's no real estate taxes because the town of Dayton owns the land. But there is a loss to the general public because the public use of it would be open space, all the things I just talked about, okay? So when you look at the private owner who agrees to lease property to a solar company, that's one issue. And as I said, if I owned that property, I'd be saying, wait a minute. The public is losing nothing because they had no access to it because it belongs to me. And I can say, no trespassing and all of that. But the other scenario is, if it happens, and we've had a proposal years ago to put a solar farm on the landfill on Tremont Street. And the only reason that wasn't pursued is because I remember saying, I was on the board at the time, we want to guarantee that if that cap is punctured, Mr. Solar Farm, you're going to pay to replace it and take care of everything needed. So they didn't want to give us that kind of guarantee, so that went away, okay?
Yep.
So in reading this, these are the kinds I'm thinking about. There is definitely, without saying they're the same, because they aren't, but there is definitely language that talks about remediation of the landscape on one sheet I got here. And on the proposal, there is this fee you're talking about, which talks about, the land is no longer
Source
agricultural
replacement fee.
or it's not forested.
Okay,
So those are the issues that I came up with in looking at this.
okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, so, understood. Anybody else from the public, please?
Lauren Beausoleil, 1680 Pine Street.
Alan Beausoleil, 1680 Pine Street.
All right, thank you.
I had a question about the SOP. How does that stand with this bylaw?
The SOP was temporary? Was it a temporary Band-Aid as a stopgap? This puts this into the town bylaw. So this replaces that. It's the same language. Now it's going to be part of the town's bylaw.
Okay, because some of the things that I didn't see that were in this, that were in the SOP. But there was an Apex B that wasn't there.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So we incorporated some of the language to help out to define battery storage units on that. We also incorporated some things, especially some of the concerns that you had with the noise pollution. I know that came up a lot, when the past couple hearings that we had, noise pollution, annual reporting, so that was incorporated in this. The SOP is, like what he said, is a Band-Aid, but the planning board is still working on a rules and regulation for things like the battery storage units. So that's a different procedure. So what we're doing is we're working on a rule and regulation. So what happens is it's a little bit easier for the planning board to be able to adapt it without having to go to a town meeting, because the solar industry changes all the time and it's always evolving. And as you can see, we seem to be with the zoning bylaws, we are always behind the 8 ball, like what we are with the battery storage units. And of course, we couldn't do anything until we went to town meeting to do anything. It's a little bit easier with the rule and regulation, where we can have a public hearing, we can come up with a standard and have a public hearing, and then it can go into effect without having to wait 6 months to a year and go to town meeting. And then, even so, if it gets adopted by the townspeople, then we have to wait for the Attorney General to accept it, to approve it and accept it.
So the SOP doesn't go away, when SOP is going to stay in place.
Right.
And be
That's
regulated
still in
by-
place, and that's still in the procedure, but at the same time, we're still working on finalizing everything and fine tuning, and then we're gonna get a rule and regulation in place. So if, and forgive me, Nancy, you have a rule and regulation for the stormwater, right, for your stormwater permits. The Board of Health has rules and regulations that they have in place for, help me out here, Tom, rules and regulations, Board of Health, you have rules and regulations in place for, just off the top of your head,
Title V inspections.
many things, but it just, instead of going to town meeting, which, as, like I said, we always seem to be behind the 8 ball.
So the SOP is going to turn into rules and regs.
It's gonna turn into a rules and regs.
Okay, so it's
And
not gonna go
there'll
away.
still be a public hearing for that, because the planning board is still gonna require a public hearing for the public to come in, weigh in, and just like what we're doing right now. The difference is, for your purpose, there's no town meeting requirement. So we still have to do the publication, we have to do the notification, we have to do the public notice, we have to have the public hearing. I think you have to read it in the record 3 times, and then it goes into effect and it's adopted. So that's a little bit different, and it's easier.
Mr. Chairman, point of order,
Yes, ma'am.
public hearings are what go in the newspaper. Bylaws, things like that that have to be voted at a town meeting. A public meeting is what we conduct for regulations. So that would not be a public hearing. You wouldn't have to put it in the paper for regulations.
Oh, forgive me.
Stormwater, example, we had to have the public hearing on the bylaw. That's what went to town meeting for a vote. All of the regulations, which is really the meat to enforce the bylaw, were presented at a public meeting. Again, we notify the public over our normal channels, but we don't put it in the newspaper. So we could use, cable and all that other stuff. Yes, that's a public meeting, but it is not a hearing. And the reason is because it's easier to add or change regulations, because you don't have to go through that whole hearing process and bylaw changes. But the public still has a chance to have input, and it gives the board some flexibility when they have to amend regulations, because something changes. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
So that's why.
Okay.
Got it.
Yep.
So if I could just mention,
Sure.
that
We can.
the aesthetically pleasing, if the batteries were, it stated aesthetically pleasing, it would be blocked, screened, whatever.
That would be
That-
part of the,
Building permit, right?
the building permit, but that would also be part of the standard of the rules and regulations.
Okay,
Because
and,
that's already in the standard operating procedure.
yes.
Right.
So that's gonna be
That's what I was,
incorporate-
those
yes.
were the things that, and the 10-foot limit.
Correct.
10-foot height, because
Yep.
in doing research, they have been known to double them. They are
I
able
have
to
read-
double them.
Yes, we actually, I
So-
think we just came across that, so yes. Yeah.
That was one of the things. And I didn't quite understand why there was an option for a waiver on that, because there's a waiver in it. And, I mean, these are safety
current
rules of
bylaw?
distance
Was that
in
the
the bylaw, in the proposed bylaw.
In the proposed bylaw.
Yeah.
So that's a standard.
It almost, from reading it, it almost appeared as though the setback being 200 feet from one point, and then another 100 foot from a wooded area, it almost seemed like the board could waive that 1 and 200 feet if they increase their fire suppression unit for the storage batteries. That's the way it kind of read to me.
Well,
Are we
that-
talking about that in the
It's-
standard operating
It's
procedure?
right, it's
Or are we
right here.
talking about in
I can,
here?
I can read it. It says,
Okay.
for energy storage installations, in order to secure public safety concerning the following setbacks shall be as follows: no less than 200 feet from any property line, no less than 100 feet from the tree line, vegetative buffer. And the next letter, letter D, is what you're talking about, the waivers. Notwithstanding the aforementioned setback requirements, the planning board, as appropriate, shall have the authority to waive setback requirements based on site-specific conditions, and only after review of substantial evidence, including but not limited to detailed engineering reports or product engineering certification, which demonstrate that safety concerns have been minimized, that setbacks have been complied with to a reasonable extent.
So, was I correct in assuming that? That,
It-
like, if they had a grade 1 suppression, fire suppression unit, and grade 4 being the highest, if they increased it to grade 2, then you could apply for a waiver, because
I mean, you
they've
can always apply for a waiver,
Right.
whether or
It
not,
doesn't-
But
it doesn't mean anything.
safety is safety.
Well,
Right.
I'm-
You know,
I'm
I
just
mean,
looking-
that's our concern, is
And-
that safety would be compromised.
Okay.
And with solar fields,
And if safety was compromised, the waiver would likely not be approved.
right, but with future solar fields, I just think it'd be more consistent to just adhere to the 200 feet and the 100 without giving any solar company an opportunity to say, well, you know, like the storage batteries they put in without permission, and then said, we're sorry. That would eliminate that. Now, if you don't have the 100 feet, you don't have the 200 feet, don't put them there.
Right, but their language there protects that from happening, because it doesn't just say you can get a waiver. It says it has to be substantial evidence, and then it's still up to the board to approve it or deny it. So it's
Understood.
it's not automatic.
Anything else?
Okay, and just our personal opinion for future sites, I know it doesn't affect us, but there is, in our opinion, no way anything should be left less than 100 feet on all sides.
On residential
Not just the
sides.
front side, but the sides, the back, the front, the rear, all sides.
You all seen what 50
It's
feet is.
ridiculous
Okay,
what shows.
all right.
So, thank you.
Thank you to the board. Congratulations on your assignment.
Why was he smirking when he walked away? Mrs. Goulart?
Now I will speak as a stormwater person.
Oh, boy.
I just want a clarification before I address what was just discussed.
Yes, ma'am.
When you were reading the beginning of that, you talked about minimum lot size, and you said kilowatt hours. Do you mean megawatts? Everything that we do, pilot
I don't
agreements and everything
I
else.
don't remember reading any power at all.
Oh, because I wrote down KWH, and I wrote next to it, do you mean megawatts?
We were talking about foot setbacks just now?
I think a minimum size for a lot to have a solar installation, and again, I'm just looking for uniformity in vocabulary, because when we talk about a solar installation, it's in megawatts,
Yes.
and so what comes into the building commissioner for review and approval is in megawatts, AC, not DC, and the pilot agreement only deals with megawatts, AC. Because the solar company has always said, we want to talk DC, and we say, we don't do that.
So
This is it. okay?
4631 talks about minimum size lot, and it says that a large-scale system may not be located on any parcel less than 8 acres. And then it talks about a small-scale system, which, notwithstanding the foregoing, any small-scale ground-mounted system which exceeds a nameplate capacity of 50 kW shall not be located on any parcel of land which is less than 2 acres. And further down, large-scale, I thought I saw something in the terms of megawatts further down. That is sound.
Was the above part you read privately owned solar, like a developer coming in? It's not somebody putting one in their yard or on their roof, correct?
It's not private. I mean, it's not just somebody putting it on the roof.
Okay.
It's a, requirements are common to all large-scale and small-scale ground-mounted solar electric installations.
Right, and the only thing I'm again mentioning is, everything we deal with is in megawatts. And the number of megawatts determines if it's a small scale or a large scale. So all I'm saying is.
It's 0.05 megawatts.
Yes, okay, when you said kilowatts is what triggered the thought, and I wrote the note.
It's just a different, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we can, it can
So-
be changed to megawatts, but it's really just 50 kilowatts for a small scale. And then on the large scale, I'm looking for, do you know what that definition is?
So the definition is in the back. A solar voltaics is 8 acres that is structurally mounted on the ground and is not roof mounted and has a minimum nameplate capacity of 1 megawatt DC. Does that sound right?
1 megawatt what?
1
DC.
megawatt DC.
Okay, that's another point. In the town of Dayton, we deal with AC, especially when we're dealing with companies that are, let's say, not located in the United States. We already had that discussion with them and said, we understand that DC gets converted to AC, but the pilot agreement and the permit you're going to get is all going to contain the same language, and we deal with megawatts and AC. And they're all told, when you file for that pilot agreement, make sure the exact description, you're going to fill in the blanks on the pilot, matches exactly what's on the permits going to be issued by the building commissioner. Because we don't want to get into, over the years, somebody coming back and says, that's not what we meant. So that's another thing. Again, I'm just looking for uniformity across what we do.
So Mr. Chairman, what's the AC then?
Alternating current
Alternating
as
current.
opposed to direct current. Direct current gets generated and gets converted into alternating current.
Yeah, the panels themselves make DC power, DC
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
And then they go through their power regulation and inversion and turn into AC. They also store energy in the batteries and dump to the grid. I don't know if their battery storage is DC as well.
So our original definition says 1 megawatt DC.
And if by some chance somebody wanted a pilot agreement, we would convert that to AC. So I'm
Right.
I'm not telling you you have to do it. I'm just looking for uniformity in
Right.
language in the town across what we all try to do, so that down the road, neither planning or stormwater or anyone else will say, wait a minute, that's not what it says. This says this and this says that. So that's the only reason I point out the difference, or what we all use relative to actually dealing with these companies. So relative to the discussion that just took place about waivers and setbacks and all that, I don't question your ability to grant waivers based on the rules you have. However, when it comes to actual setbacks, it is the fire chief who determines whether or not he will issue a permit for battery storage units. And what we're dealing with right now on Brook Street is that the battery storage units did not appear on the general plans that were submitted. They were only put on electrical plans. Well, we don't get to see electrical plans. This is what happened. In the meantime, they installed the shells that will hold all of the,
Yeah, but your concerns would be
Units.
covered by the SOP and eventually the rules and regs.
so what I'm saying is, regardless of what you do, when it actually comes to those battery storage units being permitted, even if you grant a waiver, it's the fire chief who will make the final decision. So, because we're dealing with a situation now where the batteries they're too close to the edge of the property line, where they actually have property. They're trying to get an easement from the property owner that would allow them to clear cut enough feet so that the tree line would be further back from where those storage units are right now. That was the last thing. We had a site visit there in April, I believe it was. And that was one of the things that was discussed. And the fire chief made it clear, permitting of those batteries is really his alone. And all of the discussion that took place about suppression systems and alarm systems, those have taken place at least 2 site visits, because I raised some of those issues myself. So relative to the one that we're dealing with on Brook, okay, that's the status of it. And when the fire chief gets a reasonable solution from the developer, then we'll all know what's going to happen. But I just mentioned that to you because you do have the power to grant waivers, but there's got to be consideration of what the fire chief duties and responsibilities are as the fire chief. And this is what we're dealing with right now. Okay? Thank you.
Eric Weinstein at Borrego. Question for the board is, so the bylaw that is proposed here is PV and energy storage falling under the title of PV. Is it the intent of the bylaw or is it the intent that standalone energy storage projects would fall under this as a regulatory vehicle?
Yes. Yeah, I do have a modification that we're going to talk about here shortly, I think, right? That was one of my comments where we wanted to specifically add that language.
so.
Yeah, because it doesn't explicitly call that out, and so to cover that, let me just find it here. That'd be a good time to read it. Because, give me one moment, this is my comments section. Let me see.
It was on your page 6.
Isn't that what she was talking about? Isn't that under the modification right now?
Those are the comments on the back?
Yeah, I believe so.
She should have been shut off right now.
Yeah, so we're looking at language right now also from the town of Watley. So, 600 feet, 100 feet. So, it says here for small scale, the battery energy storage system must number only those needed to support solar installation at the site. Spent or expired, damaged battery, energy storage system must be immediately removed from the site. That's just our language from the SOP. And then the other one for the energy storage under the setback, battery energy storage units shall be limited to only those needed to support the solar installation at the site. Their total maximum power output may not exceed the nominal kilowatt generating capacity of the installation as measured in direct current, and the storage capacity should not be larger than that required to provide electricity at that maximum power output. For a period of 4 hours, spent or expired battery units must be immediately removed from the site. So that's the language we're looking to put in here that will call that out specifically.
So the language is referring to batteries that are necessary for the PV site. So for standalone batteries that are not connected, that would not be going through this bylaw. Is that, I understand that right?
This is, right. That would make it so that would not be part of this.
Okay. Got a secondary question there, but I
Well-
want to pause while you're thinking.
What do you think, Carrie?
Sorry, what?
So, I mean, initially I said that a standalone battery would be covered by this, but we're specifically talking about putting in language that would exclude
Right. So that's,
that entirely,
right. So then we'd be back at square one again. If we put
that language in there.
that language in there, we would be back at square
Okay.
one.
So, but the intent would be to not do that, to not have a separate document or a separate set of rules specifically. So, yeah, these are commented sections, not actually language in here yet. So we need to discuss whether or not we want to put this in here. Okay. The intent is to have this be part of that. Have a standalone battery, storage installations be covered by the same bylaw. So the language I just read to you, we're likely not going to include that in here, just to not have to have a separate set of documents to speak specifically to those installations. So, back to my original answer, yes.
Okay. So the SOP and like rules and regulations as well, that kind of lines up with the bylaw. That's the intention.
Yes.
Is I guess the same question, given the SOP is also PV and storage, is that the intention that standalone storage would
Apply to standalone.
apply the same way?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a timeline that is like anticipated for the rules and regs for SOP?
Not at this time. We've been working on this first, to get this approved first,
Okay.
and then we'll get the rules and regs in place. I
Okay.
mean, it's pretty much, like I said, it's, you know, we have the SOP, the standard operating procedure, so it's just taking that and then working from there, which that's pretty much is the foundation of it. So,
The SOP being the foundation of this bylaw.
the rules and regulations.
Excuse me. Okay.
And so it's just, you know, sitting down with the, we have a permitting team, which is the building commissioner, myself, and the Board of Health, Conservation Commission. So we've been meeting, and the fire chief, to make sure we're all on the same page. But of course, with the annual town meeting, it's kind of, and wanting to get this bylaw in place, that's kind of taking precedence right now. So then we're working, but at least we have the SOP in place right now, so that we have that in place. Then we could work on this, and then we're gonna go back to the rules and regulations.
Okay. Secondary question also was, I just heard a few questions about like setbacks from batteries, just like clarifying question on like the background of, you know, it's a 200-foot setback for battery storage from property lines. Like, what's the background there? I know I just heard
Oh, that's from the fire chief.
from the fire chief.
That's his, there was a number of different people involved in the original SOP, where a lot of this language was carried forward from, and he was involved in that. That came from him and the building inspector, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that was from there, and what they felt would be appropriate for that type
Okay.
of installation.
So fire hazard concern, essentially.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I do have one question. We couldn't hear who you were,
I'm sorry, Eric Weinstein at Borrego.
and for who?
He's
Borrego?
Borrego, they're another company that they're looking to put a battery storage facility in the town of Dayton, different part of Dayton.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I couldn't hear a word you said.
I couldn't hear him either.
Sorry about that.
You got-
You got that now? All right.
Chairman, may I ask a question of him through you?
Yes, ma'am.
My question is he talking about an existing solar installation already located in Dayton, or is it completely separate?
I can answer that question. It's not a solar installation currently in Dayton. It's a brand-new project that they came to us a month or 2 months ago for initial presentation.
Is it National Grid?
No, Borrego.
No, that's not my question. If I may, again, we have existing solar farms that don't have battery storage. We anticipate they will be asking to add, that's why I
Yeah,
asked if it was.
This is not a solar farm, it's just a
Okay.
battery location.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, in dealing with the Brook Street project and the research I did, there is an incentive, a cash incentive, paid to the operator of the solar farm through the state, Public Utilities Commission, Office of Energy, and whatever.
Yep.
And if they get battery storage, in other words, whether they do it in the beginning or add it later on, there is a financial incentive to do it. Also, because of the governor's targeted date of getting us to be, green energy and all that, installation of just battery storage units that's also come before us, not a formal application. But in another section of town, it's our understanding that there is going to be a proposal for a large battery installation that will tie into the high-tension lines in that area. And they will draw energy from the high-tension lines and store it in the battery units so that if the sun's not shining or at night and they need to draw down power, those units will be there. So again, in that particular case, it's a large utility. I believe the installations will be on their property, so there's a question about taxability of the personal property because of the rules that apply. So that's why I just wanted to know if we're talking about one of our existing, which you said we aren't. But again, I don't know when that bylaw was passed in the community, Whatley. The rules have changed, and because of these financial incentives, and I wouldn't have known that except of the research I did trying to figure out questions we had about the Brook Street thing. So I just mentioned this for informational purposes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, is there any other questions from the public on this bylaw? Okay. So, members of the board, I have concerns about 4680. I think the language needs work. I don't know what our options are, because we're trying to get this into the warrant for next month, Carrie. And what we can do. I don't know if we have time to massage that, if it makes more sense to strike it.
Strike it.
And then, is there any possible way of putting it in there later, putting it in our rules and regs? How does that work? Because I want that to be in there,
Yep.
but it needs work.
I would say, I think your best bet is to strike it and add it later.
Okay, add it next year
Yeah.
or special?
Yeah.
We don't do it on
I
specials,
would
right?
say, I was hoping, because I did send all the information off to the Agricultural Commission and the Community Preservation Committee and the Conservation Commission, looking for their input, and I did not hear from any of them.
Okay.
So I think it would be very good to have their input as well. Community Preservation Committee, yes, I did
Okay.
say that, right? So it's, along with language cleaning up, I think it'd be very important to hear from them because they are highly involved.
Okay.
So I think it would be good to strike it for now, but keep it on the table, and then add it later on once we get everything else
Thank you.
solidified.
What's the pleasure of the board on what you want to do at 4680?
I respect
Any comments?
your opinion on that, and you know more about it than I do. That's my opinion.
Any comments there, Woody?
I say we strike it too.
Okay, all right, so, I entertain a motion to strike 4680, for the time being, and we'll look at it in the future.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussions from the board or from the public? Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? It's 4 votes for aye, so motion carries. We're gonna strike 4680. For the time being, and look at it at a future time. Thank you, Mrs. Goulart, for taking the time to review that and bringing that to our attention. We'll take serious consideration into that and,
Mr. Chairman, just one question. Since you have SOP in place,
yeah,
that would continue in place until there is either a change in the bylaw or a change, or you move it into regulation, so it's still a valid document that's being used.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, so, I did have some additional, I don't know if it's worth, do we have to vote on typographical things?
I'm sorry, vote on
Typographical changes and things of that nature to this document?
typographical? No.
Because the rest of my comments, aside from, I can talk to a lighting requirement. That's a typographical thing. Let me just look at these real quick. My additional comments I had on here. Okay, so, yeah, so most of those are typographical. The only one that I want to ask the board about here, on it's 4650. So on 4650, on my comments, I ask about, there's a lighting requirement. Lighting of large-scale ground-mounted solar electric installation. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard of dark sky compliance. Is that something we want to consider for this? You familiar with that?
No.
So, dark sky compliance, it's a thing, and I said in here, no kidding, it's really a thing. What that does is, when you design lighting for a parking lot, for whether it's a small parking lot, whether it's a large store parking lot, you can get dark sky compliant lighting. And what that does is, instead of casting light in all directions, to prevent light pollution, which you normally get in cities, you can put proper shading and proper direction of the lighting so it lights only where it needs to light and not throwing light in other directions. Nothing too special, you just have to get the proper fixtures.
I have that in front of my house.
You have dark sky compliant lighting?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's what that is, and I thought that language should be in here, where lighting, adding the word dark sky compliant lighting of large scale, just adding that in addition, just so when lighting is considered for these facilities, that they take that into consideration. So that's one. So I'll go through these one at a time, and we'll go back through here. My next one is just a typographical thing. Appendix B, I don't know what that was, on page 5. That might be another section in the bylaw, existing bylaw, right? Gary?
I'm sorry, which one?
On page 5, I had a comment asking about Appendix B.
Appendix B, so that is our, in the back, that's our,
It's existing bylaw setbacks.
it's our table dimensional regulations.
4658. On 4658, it says Appendix B, so I just had a question because the entire
It
thing
is.
isn't here.
Yeah, it's our,
It's the existing one.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good. All right, thank you. Next one is on 4659. And when the gentleman from Borrego was up, this is what I read out. On section 4659, letter B, talking about small-scale ground-mounted solar installation. And I was asking if this should also add battery energy storage must number only those needed to support solar installation at the site. Spent, expired, or damaged battery energy storage system must be immediately removed from the site. So disregard that comment. After talking, we don't want to add, muddy the waters here. I also want to disregard comment number 5, which is right below it. But I do have a question on the setback statement there, which is comment number 6, and asking if we should add the statement present here that reads, fire department must have access to municipal maintained public water within 800 feet of the center point of the battery energy storage system modules, but at no time should be located any closer than 100 feet from the nearest battery energy storage system. Adequate water supply shall be determined by the applicable public water supplier and the Dayton Fire Chief. This is from the SOP. So I don't know if we need to add that here.
you want me to add that there? So that it's clearly stated that they have the setbacks and the water supply.
Right, because that, in the SOP, it says setbacks plus this.
Yep,
Oh,
And it's a clarification of the why,
right.
and for the water source. me just make sure if that's the last one. There is one more. And then we'll go back and go over them one at a time.
Surety.
Surety, 4693, should that be financial security or financial surety? Surety? Okay, cool. All right, so that's typo, though. That's not really a
Yeah.
voting thing. All right, so I think we've only got really two things to vote on. So let me go back to, let's vote them in reverse. Okay, so if you go back to page 6, if you look at 4659, letter C, I'm proposing adding the language in my comment 6. So I'll entertain a motion to add the language from the SOP about the fire department and in comment 6. Do you need me to read the text back? No? Okay. You guys have it in front of you if you want to take a moment. And when you're ready, if somebody can make a motion on that, if you see fit.
Just so I'm clear, if technology were to change for whatever reason, this would be something we can always readdress in the rules and regs? Okay.
That's the beauty of the rules and regs. Yep.
Chairman, if you could try to clarify this a little bit, not only for me, but I believe everyone is going to be a little on the
Okay.
confused side.
All right, so we mentioned before about the 4659 letters C. This is the statement about the setback. For energy storage installations, in order to secure public safety concerns, the following setbacks shall be as follows. No less than 200 feet from any property line and no less than 100 feet from the tree line vegetative buffer. I'm proposing adding the additional language to that letter that says the fire department must have access to a municipal maintained public water supply within 800 feet of the center point of the battery energy storage system modules, but at no time should be located any closer than 100 feet from the nearest battery energy storage system. Adequate water supply shall be determined by the applicable public water supplier and a Dayton fire chief. And this language is a direct lift from the SOP. So the SOP that we had already approved, when it talks about setbacks in that document, this language is right there. But in this bylaw, it's not here explicitly. So I just wanted to add the additional fire chief statement that was already in the SOP, carry it forward here, because it wasn't carried forward. So
You want a motion to,
add this language.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any other discussions from the board members or anybody in the public before we take it to a vote? All right. Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? All right, motion carries 4-0. Thank you. And I believe we have one more.
4651.
4651. 4651. 4651 is the dark sky compliance. So I entertain a motion to add dark sky compliant ahead of the word lighting in 4651. Or actually, it should be after, because that's a period, right? Lighting? Yeah, so after, between lighting and lighting, add the words dark sky compliance. So entertain a motion to add the word dark sky compliant ahead of the second lighting word. All right, motion made. Do we have a second? Second? Motion made, motion seconded. Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Dark sky compliance goes back to probably 2006 or 7. I continue to represent MMA on the Policy Committee for Energy and the Environment. There has been proposed legislation to require it. I think this is a great idea.
Okay.
I will say this because Mr. Pyers is sitting here. Mr. Pyers and I, in 2008, sat in with Mass DOT and representatives from Berkeley to approve the final design of the Berkeley-Dighton Bridge. That's probably the oldest dark sky installation we have. So when you cross the Berkeley-Dighton Bridge, that's dark sky because the light doesn't go up into the sky. It's designed to, if you will, as they described it, and they hired a special landscape architect to do this. The light comes down, it falls on the road, and it also goes over the fence, and it washes down where the pillars are. So if you're looking over, you're on the bridge at night, it actually illuminates going down also. So, but there is pending legislation, and it keeps coming up. I'm not sure where it is right now. I think the latest changes that have been made to streetlights, because we've got energy efficient lights, I think those are also dark sky compliant. Not only in TMLP, but I think in the area that National Grid has, where we've had lights replaced. But
Okay.
if anyone doesn't know dark sky, they know the Berkeley-Dighton Bridge.
All right. Okay, so we have a motion, second. Any other discussions before we take it to a vote? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? It's 4 ayes, so that motion carries.
All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, where did you want dark sky?
Oh, if you look at, I just went by it. 4651, there's the word lighting. And then,
It's highlighted?
yeah, it's highlighted. And right after the word lighting, it says lighting again.
Yeah,
So add the words dark sky compliant lighting.
okay. So in between the two lightings?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we struck out 4680, and we've added 2 additional modifications. So I think at this point, we're ready to entertain a vote to accept section 4600 as amended. So I'll entertain a motion to do that.
I'll make that.
And a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussions?
No.
Anybody from the public, additional comments? Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Did I?
Said aye, okay. We got 4 ayes, no opposed. Any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. All right, excellent.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
may I ask if you could take the kennel residential out of order so that they could be heard?
Yeah, okay.
Next.
Thank you, good night. All right, so I entertain a motion to take agenda item 5B4 out of order so they can be heard next.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. We're just voting to take it out of order.
So that you can go
I
now.
understand that, but I
Okay.
don't know if anybody's here that wanted to speak to it.
Okay. All right, but,
In all fairness I appreciate you taking it out of order, but so long as nobody's here to speak.
Well, the other one's flood overlay district, I don't think.
Okay.
okay. All right,
Mr. Pacheco's got a little one at home, I'm sure he wants to kiss
all right,
him.
so if, we vote to take it out of order? I don't think we did.
No, we didn't.
There was a motion,
There was a second.
and there was a second, but now we need to make
All right,
a roll call.
let's vote on that.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye, aye. 4 ayes,
Thank you.
Aye.
motion carries. No
Thank you.
abstentions or nays. All right. Floor is yours,
Aye.
kind sir.
Good evening. Tom Pyre is no longer employed by the town of Dayton.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Although there was a joint effort on putting the article together, and there was the work of myself representing the Board of Health, Jim Aguirre zoning, town clerk Mark Pacheco, police chief Lieutenant Sean Cronin, and our animal control officer Stacy Ferry. So, well, this was 2 years in the works, and in order to get it right and get everybody's input, we got together and had a few meetings to see if we could get it right, and I think we did. If there's no objection from the board, I'd like to read what's existing now, and it'll give you a better idea of what we're trying to do.
Please do.
Okay, the existing definition is kennel residential, a pack or collection of 4 or more dogs that are owned or kept under single ownership for personal use and enjoyment, may be allowed in a residential or business district by a special permit. This also includes a personal kennel as defined in Mass General Laws, Chapter 140, Section 136A, and there's a note, this section does not apply to properties with 3 dogs or less. As you can see, special permit is required for any, in the old language, any type of kennel. And this became a problem because a lot of people who wanted to just have a, say, 4 dogs or something in a residential kennel, were not coming forward to do the right thing and get the proper paperwork because of the cost. To mail a certified letter, well, the hearing for the zoning board, it's somewhere up $750, I think, $750, plus the cost of a certified letter these days is $7.13. So now we're talking probably upwards of $1,000 for people to just get a kennel on their property for a few dogs, well, at least 4. So the new language we put together, motion to see if the town will vote to amend the Town of Dayton zoning bylaw, Section 6, definitions, by deleting the existing kennel residential definition in its entirety and replace it with the following definition, kennel residential, which is a pack or collection of 4 or more dogs that are owned or kept under single ownership for personal use and enjoyment, may be allowed in a residential or business district as a matter of right if the location of the proposed kennel has a minimum lot size of 35,000 square feet. If the lot size is less than 35,000 square feet, a public hearing will be required with the Board of Health. This also includes a personal kennel as defined in Mass General Law 140, Section 136A, and this does not apply to properties with 3 dogs or less, and Appendix A shall be amended to reflect these changes. The Board of Health at the time, when I was serving on it, we voted to accept the responsibility of a public hearing at no charge to the applicants. The only charge would be a mailing to the abutting properties by regular mail, which now I think is 53 cents, it may be 56 cents, I don't know. And by utilizing also a certificate of mailing and not doing it by certified mail. Certificate of mailing proves that an individual mailed a particular letter to a particular address. And all those are stamped by the post office. The charge of that is $1.65. So now we're talking probably $2.25. I don't have the exact amount, I didn't add it, but versus $7.13 and no charge for a public hearing.
You have to do the 300-foot,
Well, I think didn't we set it at 150?
It was supposed to be aligned with your other.
Yeah, I think we set it at 150.
It's 150.
150?
It's 150.
So, that's what we put together. We think it protects the rights of those people who are on small lots next to a small lot. You know, and
There's not a lot of lots, though, smaller than 3,500 square feet, I don't think, not even a village right away.
35,000.
Yeah, 35,000, yeah, 35,000.
Yeah, you know, and again, when it comes to the hearing, if there's no objection by a neighbor, then, you know, there's certain precautions. I think Mass General Law covers most of anything that could come up. Am I correct, Stacy? As far as nuisance barking or, you know, coming off the property because they have to be maintained on your property. So Mass General Law covers pretty much everything you can think of.
Okay.
And so that's all we have. If there's any questions, we'll field them, one of the three of us.
No, this is pretty straightforward. I don't have any questions. Anybody from the board have anything?
No, I don't.
Good luck at town meeting.
Excuse me?
It's a good luck at town meeting. You know
Yeah,
how
I
it
know.
gets when it
I know.
comes to dogs. That's how you
Well,
pack the meeting.
If there's no questions from the board at this point, I open it up to the public. If there's any questions or concerns from anybody present? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for taking me out of order. Us?
Problem. All right, so at this time, we can entertain a motion to approve the modification of
No
section.
modification.
What's that?
No.
That's not a modification. I thought he was always deleting and replacing definitions.
Motion to accept as presented.
Thank you, ma'am. At this point, I will entertain a motion to accept as presented for section 6 of definitions kennel residential.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to being on this side of things. What if we don't approve it? What if we don't approve it? You could change.
Can't hear you.
Doesn't believe me. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second, and are there any discussions? As the door shuts, there are no discussions. Very well, let's take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4 ayes. Any opposing
I
or
just took my
abstentions?
glasses off, so it's only 2.
Very well. Okay, that motion carries, 4-0. All right, so, going back to agenda item 5BI3, section 4200, flood hazard overlay district. So what we have before us in your packages here is an extensive replacement of this bylaw. And Carrie, do you have a summary of the changes here that you can discuss?
Yeah. Well, I've been working with, in conjunction with Building Commissioner Jim Aguilar and Eric Carlson, forgive me, of the, he's from the state, of the Flood Hazard Management Program.
Okay.
So recently, the FEMA has had some, they adopted and updated their flood insurance maps. And they also, forgive me, it's getting late. And the town of Dayton has adopted the floodplain bylaw. Well, actually, right now it's the flood hazard overlay district. But now there's been some changes and updates. So the state came back with FEMA, and they've been working and updated some of the language and requested that cities and towns make the changes so that it can coincide, so that people who are in the floodplain, if they have to, God forbid, go to their insurance companies and be covered, and they will be sufficiently, because we have the overlay district.
Okay.
So there was a booklet and a presentation sent out, and so I've been working with Mr. Carlson in updating that. He and I have been going back and forth. He and I finally have one put together, and here we are. So
Sorry for putting you on
it
the
now
spot there.
complies with so it now, once accepted at town meeting and the Attorney General, it will comply with what they currently have in place. And it also, they have what they call the firm map, which is the flood insurance rate map. It's issued by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, so it'll comply with that. So.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I trust you've had a chance to look through it.
No.
Chris, do you have any questions about the new flood hazard overlay district definitions. Mr. Woods?
Is the building commissioner happy with all this?
Yes, he is.
I'm happy too.
Right, it was sent out a while ago. Any questions from the public while we review it here on the board? Okay.
So just to add on that, I'm hoping, I've been talking to, the assessor's office, Lisa, who does our GIS mapping. So it's my hope that, and Mr. Carlson hasn't gotten back to me. I'm waiting until after town meeting, because I'm sure he's inundated with all the other cities and towns who are working on this. And also, hopefully this will be accepted at town meeting. Don't see why it wouldn't, but, never say never. So hopefully, once this gets approved, it's my hope that on our GIS mapping, we can incorporate the overlay district onto our GIS mapping. So anyone who is in the floodplain area, because occasionally we'll get some phone calls from residents because, you know, they'll, like, especially if they're along the water, and, you know, they're going for their homeowner's insurance or something, and they'll give us a call looking to see what's on my map, you know, where am I on the map? They'll be able to go onto the map, our GIS mapping, and say, oh, you put in the coordinates, and they'll be able to click onto a little box that says, you know, floodplain overlay district, and it'll be able to pop right up.
Well, on the GIS page, you can turn on layers too, so it should be able to.
Right, so that's what I meant, was being able to add this layer onto our GIS mapping.
Okay, well, how can they do that now?
How can they do it now?
Yeah, do they have to go to the state?
Well, what I have to do is there's some IT information I have to get from the FEMA, who creates that map, and then that has to be sent to our GIS mapping people.
Okay.
But it's all,
That's a little too technical for
it's
me.
all set by elevations of the home. The concern I have is, and we may not have any choice on that, is if we change or the elevations change in any way, there could be a lot of people affected by this.
These change periodic. I know we've gone to town meeting with these. They update these maps pretty often. I mean, not since the last time I was here, but I think right before I came, we went to town meeting for them to update these maps. So I would say every 4 to 5 years, we go to town meeting to update these maps. So I know FEMA goes out and they do their thing. But I think the other thing that they changed in the language on this was under location, was they used to reference very specific map numbers. They changed the wording on that this time around, on the way they do that. So they say, okay, well, you can go to our website and here's the map. So they changed that a little bit because it changes so often. So that was one of the other things that they did.
That's more dynamic.
Yeah.
You don't know whether the elevations have changed in any way, since the last one?
I think it did, because the scope, I mean, I don't know exactly, but I know it's changed significantly, because
There's a part right here, it says special flood hazard area. The land area subject to flood hazards and shown on a flood insurance rate map. So the insurance companies know the maps.
Yes, they do,
Yeah.
and they have access.
Then they list them all here.
But I have built homes that all I have to do is raise the sill height on a foundation, just to, meet or beat that a little bit.
Correct.
And so my concern is something like that where it's right there, borderline, floodplain, if they raise that in any way, so that means that these people will be affected, and now they're gonna be into a $2,000-3,000 a year of flood insurance, if
They
not more
might.
than that.
They might.
If they have a mortgage, yeah.
Well, whether they have a mortgage or not.
If you don't have a mortgage, you
We're
don't have
not, we're
to
not
have it.
changing the definitions, we're just carrying down what the state's doing.
Right.
That's not, we're not setting these
I mean,
definitions.
either way, the insurance companies
They're gonna follow that anyway.
are gonna follow that, so what,
Right.
This is just an update to our rules to be in alignment with the state's rules. Because right now, we're not.
Be careful not buying those areas. Well,
So this is just to, communities that voluntarily adopt and enforce the floodplain management ordinances that meet at least the minimum national flood insurance program requirements.
so this is, we don't really have, we can't change anything,
No,
so.
Yeah, I read through this, I didn't have any
Unfortunately,
concerns.
we
It
can't.
was
It's
sort
all
of
determined by
boilerplate,
FEMA.
rubber stamp from the
Yeah.
state to our local bylaw. This is really just a formality to update our documentation. That's how
correct.
I'm understanding this. Okay. Any other questions, concerns? And, all right, so, at this point, we can, like to entertain a motion to, approve section 4200 flood hazard overlay district as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second, got a motion and a second. Any discussion on this before we vote? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, and no abstentions, so it's 4 ayes, motion carries. And we are at the informal discussion with Jared Glennon.
Well, can we close the public hearing?
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing for the zoning bylaw amendments.
So moved.
Would you like the second?
second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Discussion. Let's take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. And no abstentions. Close the public hearing. Mr. Jared Glennon, you're up. Informal discussion, coastal cultivators, in regards to rezoning Route 44 Winthrop Street for marijuana district. Sir.
Hi, my name's Jared Glennon. I'm one of the owners of a company called Coastal Cultivars Incorporated. We're a vertically integrated cannabis company based here in Massachusetts. We're operational and licensed with a cultivation and manufacturing facility in Wareham and one retail store, adult use retail store in Great Barrington. We've been searching to grow our company and add additional retail locations, and in that process, I've become familiar with a property owner here in Dighton and several other people in Dighton, and am here to kind of start a discussion around perhaps extending or creating a new marijuana overlay district in the northwest corner of town on Winthrop Street on 44. As the industry has matured, more and more the retail component of the industry is searching for high traffic areas, as any other retail use might, and having seemingly a willing landowner here that would support the use on site. Here really just kind of to start a discussion and talk about it. I know previous uses might have been discussed as being extended, or other uses within the cannabis space have been previously discussed about being extended into that area and maybe didn't have success, but I'm really only looking for to talk about the potential retail use there. So a little bit more detail of us. We're a Tier 11 cultivation license, which is the largest afforded by the state. So we have a 100,000 square foot canopy down in Wareham. And we're really focused from like an ethos perspective on sun-grown and sustainable cultivation, which I think aligns with the agricultural history of this town. So we produce our products only in outdoor growing facilities and in greenhouses. We got lucky with our first retail establishment out in Great Barrington. We just launched that and opened in February. And as I mentioned, the state allows you to have 3 retail store uses, and we're looking to add to that portfolio. And I think 44 and that small strip of Winthrop that runs across the top of the town is an interesting spot, because ultimately the industry is becoming more competitive, and good location will drive revenues where consumers find it convenient to purchase products, and that ultimately favors well with the host community agreements of the town who participate in some of that revenue. So really, it's an informal discussion to kind of broach the topic, get a better understanding of what that process might look like from a town bylaw perspective, and gauge if there's a willingness to enter into it.
How big of an area are you talking about?
We need a square foot plate of, call it 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, and that's about it. Yeah.
2,000?
2,000 to 3,000 square feet is a good
The
size.
area that you're talking about, what is the zoning and what is it zoned?
It's currently zoned as just commercial, I believe, on Winthrop Street, but it's, so Winthrop and Williams come together, right? And that's where my understanding is that's the current overlay district down Williams Street. If you took a left onto Winthrop on 44 and headed down about, maybe quarter to half a mile, sort of that general area is where the location is.
Is there homes in the area?
There are some scattered residential around, but it's mostly commercial. Gas station, liquor store, convenience store. There's a restaurant in that area.
Pizza place right there.
You know where
Yeah.
the mobile station is, a Gulf station now?
Mm-hmm.
Zeke's.
There's a development that goes into the back there and then the
Yeah.
gas station
Fairway.
after that?
Yeah, the current location we're targeting is an undeveloped lot.
It's a little further down the road,
A little
right,
further
on the
down
right.
road, on the right-hand side, yep. It's
Terry,
about-
did you speak with Mr. Mullen at all about this?
I did not, he was busy.
No? I had a brief conversation with the
Okay.
town administrator, and I had a brief conversation with a couple of big landowners over there.
Okay.
And someone else is looking into putting in a industrial park.
Okay.
To have a marijuana overlay district in one location would be spot zoning, so we couldn't do that. But we could, the town of Dayton, could possibly look into some type of mixed-use type of zoning with a marijuana overlay district in it, but it would have to be, a stretch of the road,
Stand, yeah.
so we wouldn't have a spot zoning issue.
I understand.
But we did have a proposal that was shot down maybe a year and a half ago, Kerry,
At town meeting,
Almost.
yeah.
at town meeting.
November 20.
So we have a timeline or window before we could present something else, correct? Unless it's
2
a
years.
different use?
2 years, you have to wait 2 years
2 years, meaning,
from when it was shot
Last
down.
year, so it'd be another.
I believe it was November 2020 that was voted, is that
Was it a
correct?
special? Yeah.
So would it be November of 2022 it's eligible, or would it be then 1 year
After
from
that.
that?
After that,
So it'd be 2023?
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
So you're not cultivating, you're talking
Just a
recreational sales.
pure retail use here.
It's
Yeah,
recreational
we-
sales only, it's a
Right.
storefront
Yeah,
dispensary.
like a
Okay.
building.
It's not considered dispensary, that's a medical term, right?
It's called a dispensary license, but
Okay.
it's a retail store,
Right.
is what it is.
For
yeah.
medical and recreational.
We wouldn't have medical. We're not a medical producer.
Okay.
We would consider co-locating a medical license there. There's some different facets of what you have to do to be
Right,
compliant on the
right.
medical side, but we're really an adult use focused company. But relative to a little more detail, Jeff, on your question, relative to cultivation and manufacturing, we're maxed out in our current facility. We're at the top of what the state will allow. So
Okay. Yeah, so I'm looking at the map here, so you're talking way down next to Nana's Place and the Gulf Station down there. So this is
Yeah,
William Street. There's the car auction, solar panels. So this is the
it would be west of that.
currently zoned here. So you go, take a left here at Wheeler J's Pub, hang down, and drive down 44, so you're talking way down here.
Correct. In that general.
You'll see a bunch of open land over there on the
Zeke's
right.
Custom Wheels is across the street.
I honestly don't think that any of that is zoned commercial or.
I'd have to look, I don't have the thing in front
Are
of me.
there restrictions on where an overlay could go in terms of, does it need to be a commercial zone to go on top of it?
Well, we put a marijuana overlay district on, William Street, which
William
is
Street, yeah, that's
mixed
what he
use.
referenced,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's the only.
that's the only place. Yeah, we would have to rezone it and come up with some type of a plan. I know that other people are talking to other people about some industrial park.
Okay.
So, you know, the town of Dayton's always talking about making money. You know, I went on a tour to a marijuana facility in Brockton, and while I was there, they were talking about a dispensary in Rockland,
Sure.
and they're averaging $2.2 million in sales per month.
That's
2.2
impressive.
million
I,
per month.
that's
So the town of
far
Rockland.
above average,
The
but.
town of Rockland is getting 3% of that.
Correct, yeah. It's a lucrative opportunity for a
You
town.
know,
willing to
it
participate.
creates a lot of revenue, and it's becoming popular. And, well, it's very popular. You go by any dispensary and the parking lots are full. So, it would be,
Yeah.
in my opinion, speaking for myself, I don't speak for the board.
So if I could speak to the current overlay district from a retailing perspective, and I understand the facility there is going to be a vertically integrated one. From a pure retailing perspective, it has a challenging location, just like it might for a convenience store or a gas station or a liquor store, where as opposed on Winthrop Street, you get that high volume of traffic passing on 44, whether they're coming from, you know, the coast of Plymouth and trying to get down to Providence or whatever. Those are your traditional retailing locations.
Yeah, it is
on
definitely a
metros
better
like
location,
that.
yeah. I understand the motivation there, but,
Yeah.
yeah,
Have you
there's,
spoken with our town administrator?
In the past, I've spoken to him. We've traded some emails in the last couple of weeks,
Yeah.
trying to find some time to sit down and revisit.
He'd be the guy to go to next,
Yeah.
I think, you know, because he could, you know, let you know if it's workable.
Well, that's really, it's really what this is a temperature take of, you know, is there a willingness to go through the formal procedures and the process needed in order to make something like this happen? It's certainly what we do. It's the fight we've been fighting for 4 or 5 years now, with several communities, and
It's a slow process.
It takes
'Cause
time,
We have a
yeah.
dispensary that's gonna open soon,
it takes time.
and we've been working with them for, what, 3 or 4 years?
Looks like they're making some.
Yeah, they're really making progress down there now. They get their signs up, they get the parking lot paved, the building looks beautiful.
Yeah, it took us for the cultivation site 3.5 years until we had our first harvest. We had some good fortune relative to our first dispensary location out in Great Barrington. Actually, about a year and a half prior, we walked away from it for zoning reasons. Could not make it work. Unique zoning thing in that town, but some dynamics change where some abutting properties changed their own use, which allowed that location to be reconsidered, and we moved through that in about 8 months.
Are there any dispensaries that you know of that are in industrial areas?
Oh, plenty. Yeah.
To me, that's a good place for them.
Yeah.
They're away from houses,
Yeah.
they're away from, you know.
So a lot of communities took a tact where, in the early stages, that was really the only place they would allow it if the community was on board with it.
I mean, an industrial development in our town, you know, like a industrial park, even a small one would be great.
Isn't there,
Chairman of our Board of Selectmen is right there, Mr. Leonard Hull.
Would Mazone Boulevard be industrial? Mazone Boulevard, that's not zoned industrial?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, I know that, it's not Dayton, but it's gotta, cause there's a factory, isn't there like?
Yeah, it was a nail factory there.
Right before what's
Yeah.
now a dispensary. So, just a thought.
I'm not, where is this location? I'm
This
sorry?
isn't
Mazone Boulevard in Taunton. I don't know the
7
name.
minutes away.
Compassionate Care or something?
Yeah, sure,
maybe?
sure,
Yeah.
sure. Where it's, there's kind of a couple big.
Woody
retail
knows the name.
plazas.
Target,
Take a
and
left.
yeah.
Yep.
Michael's, those kind of stores.
And there's, we was just looking at a location in Berkeley, no, one exit down, what is that, 138 there, one exit down there.
Berkeley.
Yeah, yeah, so, I mean, we're interested in the area, it's local to where our farm is, and, you know, it's really just kind of trying to see if there's, a new lens to look at the industry relative to local zoning. A lot of the regulations were written when the medical program launched back in 2011, 2012. You know, I think there's a bit of normalization happening and in some communities a willingness to revisit where this might be an executable idea for the town and drive some revenue.
I would say reach out to the town administrator
Okay.
Yeah, good idea.
and the Board of Selectmen.
All right.
And hopefully everybody can come together, these gentlemen who own large parcels of land
Sure.
on Route 44, they're looking to do something too.
Just so I have just a little bit of a general better understanding, if there was a willingness to move forward with the right parties in place from like a town process, that would be a proposal to extend, call it a mixed-use zone into that area. That would be a formal, there'd be a public hearing or a town vote at town
Yeah,
meeting on that?
it'd have to be at a special or annual town meeting.
Okay, okay,
You know, and then you'd have to get a community host agreement from
Sure.
the Board of Selectmen,
sure,
and then go for,
Okay.
special permit.
okay. Advisable to do the host community agreement prior to that, or need a specific address in Dayton for a host community agreement?
Yeah, you should talk to the
Specific.
TA.
Okay, we'll do.
Formal step process
Sure,
to get to the town meeting.
sure, okay. Can I answer any questions about our company, or?
You can tell us. Whatever you want.
I think I gave you the highlights.
No, you're in business to stay in business,
Yeah,
right?
business, same business.
wanna make a profit.
We're a local group, we're not.
You wanna give Dayton 3%. You can negotiate for more.
Happily, you can't by law.
3%
Oh, you can't, okay, I'm just asking.
I'll try to negotiate for less, but I know it's not gonna
Oh,
happen.
the law is 3%
3%
is the max.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's the maximum.
We wouldn't ask for less.
I haven't found one that has yet.
Nobody has, right? But 3% is the max. I
It is
didn't
the
know
max,
that, but
yeah,
now I do.
It is the max.
All right.
It is.
See, I learned something.
Thank you, Mr. Glennon. Really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Forward to working
We'd
with
love
you
to
in
have
the
you 3%.
I hope so.
future. All right,
Well, this will way. But again, hopefully see you again. We'll talk
Okay.
about it more in detail.
all right, appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, members of the board, we have agenda item 6, approval of minutes, meeting minutes from April 6th, 2022. Entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Oh, we have 2 seconds. Any discussion before we take it to a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4 ayes. Carrie, do we have any correspondence?
No,
Any public input?
None.
no,
Are we ready for agenda number 9?
yes.
Yeah, I know.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
No?
Yeah?
Yeah.
He made a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
4 ayes. Motion carries. Adjourned at 8:28. Thank you, everybody. Good night, Dayton.